Each episode of the Blind Alchemy Podcast is designed to be helpful. Expect comedy. Do not expect consistency or sense to be made. I am Podbot. I was inspired by the Lion Goat podcast. Listen to that show. On today's episode, join the Blind Alchemist and John Buxton as they scrutinize scheduling, the interplay between moral ambiguities and individualism, and psyops. Their conversation probes the complexities of human existence as a projection of the soul, illuminating the blurred lines between right and wrong. We must apologize for the audio quality in today's episode. If you are new to the show, please be aware that the following material was recorded experimentally using a phone app. Most episodes are recorded and are produced at a higher quality.
Alright, folks. Hello and welcome to the Blind Alchemy Podcast. I am your host, the Blind Alchemist, and I am coming at you live from the kitchen with this rendition of reality as we know it. We are all one, and there is nothing new under the sun that shines down here upon the island of mind, which is somewhere adrift in the sea of frequency that creates all of reality. You see, we are connected through this energy. Now, I would like to thank you for joining us today. John, let's just have an open conversation today.
Okay.
I appreciate you being here. How are you doing today, John?
I'm feeling great. Feeling optimistic. How are you feeling today, Mr. Blind Alchemist?
I appreciate you being gung-ho.
Okay.
Oh, you know what I haven't told you yet?
What's that?
So my was last week.
Yeah, what did they say?
It didn't happen.
What?
It didn't happen.
The happened or the didn't happen?
No. The did not happen.
Oh, no. Did you drive all the way to...
Yes, I was sent to the work order for the was sent to the appointment was scheduled in without the work order. So if I'd have gone to I'd have been just as fucked as I was going to.
Yeah, that's weird.
And that was just the start of the fuck up.
That's crazy. Damn it.
They had the old name on it and the address on the work order.
Did they reschedule it?
Yeah, it's next Thursday.
Did they pay you for driving 2 hours to... Not that they should necessarily, but...
Yeah, since it was a thing, I got a whole 8-hour pay.
Oh, that's good. Did you end up going to work that night?
No.
Had you got back? Or?
No. Because I sat there for 30 minutes, waiting.
Yeah.
They called me into the admin office.
Yeah.
And this lady said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I haven't." She said, "That's congestion." I said, "No, it's here. I was told here, 1 o'clock." She said, "I have the work order."
Yeah.
But the appointment is scheduled at 1:30.
And that's more than 30 minutes from where you were.
It was a 50-minute drive. She said, "You can drive." I said, "I'm not doing that." She said, "I can't get you in today." I said, "Well, we're going to reschedule this motherfucker."
Yeah.
I watched her for 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I was in the admin, watching this lady go through every phone book like this thick of all numbers, right? Of every department, nobody answering the phone.
What was...
Not at, nobody was answering the phone.
Oh, that's crazy. So are they going to reschedule you, or did they reschedule you?
Yeah. 10 o'clock Thursday.
Okay. Well, good. Is it in...
It's in...
Did you double check that you
triple.
You need to call them before you leave in the morning?
The lady who schedules wasn't even there that day.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have got it Thursday if I wanted to. She called me the next day and was like, I heard there was a scheduling issue. I was like, yeah, there kind of was. So she's like, well, I got you. I'll get you in at this day. It's my earliest I can get you. I was like, that's fine. So after I got that all set up, I called the admin lady back and was like, hey, you remember me from yesterday? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay.
We hung out for an hour and a half. We're good friends now.
I was like, I just got off the phone with... She said, oh, good. You got it scheduled. I said, yes, and that's why I'm triple checking with you. She said, okay, we're going to do everything we can. Okay, I've got you here, this time, this day. I was like, 100% where I need to be.
And did you ask her, okay, did you get the work order, or did the work order go to this time?
I guess they just kept the work order. I don't know.
You might want to double check on that. I wouldn't put it past them.
No, she's like, you're 100% set. We even did all my stuff. I just have to show up now.
Well, that's crazy because you thought you were going to have to go to in the first place.
Well, they wanted me to go to first. And
Yeah.
the guy was like, no, we're not going to. So ultimately, I talked to 6 people. 3 days before the appointment, I talked to the lady.
Yeah.
And she told me. She did all my stuff. Took my and all that.
Yeah. Can't believe that. That sucks.
But come to find out, here's kind of what happened. Apparently, there's a scheduling hub for all of.
Okay.
And when they scheduled it, they just put it on the wrong page. Just put it at the wrong.
That can't happen, man. That's a complete fuck up. Those are 2 completely different cities. It's not like they're 2 down the road from each other. They're in completely different places.
12:15. That's when I was supposed to be there. 367 Boulevard. That's the address.
Yeah.
That's the information I was given.
That's so crazy.
I got in the car and we tried to put this street address in the GPS. It kept pulling up. I was like, no, it's. So we put the whole thing in, the whole street address. Took me straight to the fucking.
So they're on the same street?
No! It's a completely different address!
It is the same street name, though, in a different town?
That's what I thought. That must be why the GPS took us there, because it's the same address. She's like, no, it's a completely different address. It's 508 something, something, something. I'm like, what?
Wow.
How did the GPS even get me there using the wrong address?
That's great. That sounds like some shit that would happen, though. You know what I mean? So were you all frustrated and mad about it, or were you just like, this is hilarious?
Well, I was frustrated and mad about it.
Yeah.
And then I got kind of depressed about it. Why am I the guy always falling through the cracks? I have fell through every conceivable crack of society you can think of, right?
Well, no, that's not.
I fell through all the education cracks, falling through this. They didn't even do their job right when I got in the first place, and I fell through that crack.
I agree with that. That was some bullshit.
Tried to talk to Friday. I called that woman twice.
Uh-huh.
She never answered.
Yeah.
I left her a voicemail. She still hasn't returned that. I mean, it's the weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought maybe it was her. Did she schedule your appointment in the wrong place on purpose or something weird?
It's out of her head. It's third party, so they don't give a fuck.
Oh, right.
You know, it's not even
Yeah.
not even related. It's something called something, and I'm sick of.
I wouldn't take it personally, man. It's not the world conspiring against you. It's just somebody made a fuck up.
You cannot prove that in any form or fashion.
I cannot prove that, but those are those evil voices that like to tell you negative shit in your head that have been there since you were a kid.
Yeah, well, you could be right about it.
That's not true, man. I'm sorry that happened.
Man.
That's so frustrating. At least they rescheduled you, and it's not like 3 months from now.
You're right, because I was worried about that too. This has been like 4.5 months. This was 2.5 months.
I know.
And there's been no backlash to anybody who didn't do their job right.
Yeah.
If I didn't do this, I'd be in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah, believe me. I know. I've lost jobs for less.
Yeah.
I've lost jobs for far less. Good jobs.
Lost jobs for shit I didn't even do. They just like, you did it.
Like, you put an extra period in the sentence. You are fired, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, good thing I didn't schedule the appointment in the wrong damn town.
Yeah. There's too much of that too.
In the world today, you mean?
Yeah, just as a whole, there is no accountability for anybody. Certain people get held accountable, but I get held accountable for shit that happens when I'm not there. This is a true story, guy. He just tried to rip me a new one. I said, let's I wasn't here yesterday.
Yeah.
So it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And he ran away real quick. And that was the last time he tried to argue with me about something.
That's good.
That's a mother that's never held accountable right there.
That's probably why he's chewing people out, because when he does get caught, he gets in deep doo-doo.
Yeah. Maybe he does. I don't know.
I've had like that. They're kind of laissez-faire, just let people do whatever people want to do, but then when something goes wrong, they start screaming and yelling and acting crazy. Why were you acting so laid back if you're freaking out about this little thing?
Well, it's because he's got his ass figured out, you know.
Usually they're lazy because, you know, if you're going to be a good, you got to know what people are doing. You got to know what they're doing. You got to be aware.
Yeah.
And that takes hard work. You got to walk around and talk to people and see what they're doing and send a bunch of emails or have a bunch of meetings. And it's not fun. Not a job I've ever aspired to have.
They're always a waste of time.
The meetings, you mean?
Yeah. These meetings were fucking pointless.
I remember you telling.
15 minutes of jerking each other off.
Yeah, it's a different mindset.
You could have done 90% of this with a text.
Yeah. Those meetings are so much more effective than emails, though, I'll be honest with you.
Nobody reads the email.
Yeah, exactly. You send them an email and you have a meeting about the email that you just sent. And the whole point of the meeting is to discuss the email. And they're like, yeah, I read the first 2 sentences, but then you started rambling on, so I just quit reading. And now we can't actually have the meeting we're supposed to have because you needed to read the email so we could discuss the email during the meeting. So now we got to talk about the email instead of the meeting we're supposed to be having. Yeah.
I caught up a new topic.
What if the body is the projection of the soul?
Yeah. Like it projects the body in order to play it as an avatar. Well, then what the fuck is the point of that?
So the world as we know it exists as an output that the soul is creating as a byproduct of being the soul? Or is the soul creating the world that we experience as something to amuse itself? Or is it just the way that it must be?
It's got to be for a reason. Otherwise, all of this is pointless. And if we continue the way we are continuing, because it's pretty fucking pointless now, because it's nothing but mandatory economic enslavement until you're dead. And that's why we have increased the entertainment and the distraction shit, right? I think it may be actually worse in the States than it is anywhere else that way.
Yeah, well, I wonder about that because I think places like Japan that have high technology and have had high technology for long times,
but they don't really have high technology. They have the same technology that's available everywhere else. They just don't implement it, especially here. And that seems intentional.
Well, in some ways, they have better technology in a lot of places. You know, China and Japan, and I think there's probably areas of Taiwan and definitely areas of maybe Sweden and the Netherlands and, you know, other parts of Europe where there's better technology, because I think there's still a lot of research and market production going on in those places. And that's one thing that I think that does go on in America in the military. That's always been our main focus on research and new product creation. And I think that's just because people are trying to get those contracts. Not saying it's not being done, because there's this huge self-made maker science thing going on. I'm noticing it on YouTube, of course, and then there's Curiosity streams and these new sort of streaming services that have been set up by these maker independent scientists folks who they may have jobs in science that they make a living at, but then they have hobbies where they're doing their own science and trying to figure things out and creating new ideas. And I think there's a lot of that going on. You know, it's kind of like you choose your poison. What do you choose to amuse yourself with? Do you choose to amuse yourself with something that's pushing the envelope forward? Or are you amusing yourself with something that's self-serving? Or are you amusing yourself with something that's just entertaining?
Yeah.
Because I think when you're creating art, you know, if you're creating music or you're creating some sort of visual art or you're creating, I think of this as like an audio art form. This thing that we're doing with the podcast, I think that's like a audio art form in a way. I like to approach it that way. I don't know that it's great art, but it's something that I'm creating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that that has value in some way. Maybe not as value as entertainment, but there's some value in the fact that we're doing something creative. What do you think about that? Do you think it's creative?
Yeah, there's something in it, but I try to focus on learning how to improve myself, right? Try to be the quintessential human being that whatever I was designed to be or purposely brought to this plane of existence. If you're not fulfilling that, you're kind of wasting everybody's time, and nobody is really doing what they were born to do, I guess. Very few, you know.
They're not reaching their full potential, you mean? Or
are you? Am I? I'm not.
No, I'm not. I'm intentionally not.
I've been told that my whole life. I've got huge potential, but without passion and without purpose, potential is pointless.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at theBlindAlchemyPodcast@gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
Sit back, relax, take a deep breath, and when you feel it in your chest, exhale into the now moment and join me, the Blind Alchemist, as we conduct a little blind alchemy.
So how do you drive that purpose and that passion?
Yeah,
I think that's a thing that you can work on with your self-improvement.
but I am wholly uninspired, wholly unimpressed by like most everything lately. And it's just like, wow. Like, I will tell you something weird I was doing the other day at work. I was doing this breathing technique because everything was running fine. And I got to thinking about connecting with the higher self, whatever aspect of whatever that controls the functioning of the body. So I was sitting there and I was doing this breathing technique where I was focusing everything on the solar plexus, my attention. And it was probably a good 20 minutes that I was free enough to do this, probably a little longer. And I became aware that people stopped bothering me. People stopped approaching me to talk to me. There were two people that one guy would only come within about 4.5 feet of me. Like he couldn't come any further. And one guy, he got a little closer, but I could feel how negative this dude was. And he just stood there and stared at me for like a whole minute and a half. He wanted to fucking be in there, but he couldn't pass the point because he wasn't a high enough vibration or however you want to say that. It was really weird. There was only like one person that could get close enough to touch me.
So did you feel like you were creating a sort of polar magnetic field around yourself of this energy? Was it a positive energy that you were?
Yeah. Because I was focusing on positive charge and gratitude and all those things. It was like they couldn't get any closer to me, and it was weird.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get back to that because I wanted to try it again the next day and a couple of, since then. And it's not a state you can maintain consciously. You have to be consciously aware you're doing it.
You have to get into the flow in order to let it just happen.
Yeah. How do you enter that flow state intentionally?
Yeah, I fight with that. I can relate to that with music, especially if I haven't been practicing much lately. If I'm playing music often and all the time, I can get into that flow state with music where I can just make music and I don't pay attention to how long I've been playing or whatever. And I'll look up and be like, oh, I played my guitar for 4 hours straight, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
But that's very rare these days because I just am not practicing on the level that I was many, many years ago. But so if you try to put yourself in that state, it's similar. You can't make it happen. You just have to play around until it happens.
Yeah.
Tried to explain that to other people. I think for some people, music comes very naturally to them. I don't feel like it was ever that way for me. I was like the dumb kid in class trying to do the math homework I had to study. And I'm not saying that kid is dumb because I really don't believe that. I don't believe that's true.
Everybody's intelligent in their own way.
Yeah. I think that's some bullshit that society puts on us.
Yeah. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will always be stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the kid who's not good at math or doesn't have a propensity for math or doesn't enjoy math or whatever it is, the scenario, I feel like I'm that kid when it comes to music. I had to work harder to make it happen for me than other people do necessarily.
Yeah.
Which may or may not be true. That could just be a thing I tell myself.
I don't have any talent for it, really. I love it, and I wish I could turn the shit in here into actual sound, but I can't. I don't know how.
It's just repetition. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. I mean, you literally have to do it 10,000 times, and then it's easier. But you have to keep doing it.
Repeat the process till you can command it, pilot the plane till you can land it, and then aim that bitch for Mars.
I haven't heard that.
I just come up with that the other day, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So is it a plane or a rocket ship? Because you might have a hard time once you reach the stratosphere.
Well,
Are you just going to fly along the curvature of the earth?
Well, I mean, I was writing the other day, and that's what it came up with.
No, I like that idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to poke holes in it. I think that's great. But I'm curious about this idea of the soul projecting the body. That was a very interesting philosophical thought that I've never had before. The perspective of...
Well, think about the word human. Break it down. What is hue?
I don't know the etymology of that.
H-U-E. What is hue?
Well, H-U-E is for a color of light.
Ah, color, light. Ah. Where do we reside as a human being? What is the limitations of our perception?
Yeah, as far as we know, we exist in some sort of spectrum of the energy of the light spectrum.
That's right. So is that a conscious limitation, or is it a biological limitation, or is it just because the soul can only project in that frequency range? Do we exist in that frequency range because that's the limitations of the projection of the soul? Is it a consciousness, or is it just an energetic projection from the soul?
So when you say projection, do you mean like a projector, like I'm projecting a movie on the wall and it's playing out on the screen, and it's a filtering of the energy of light through an emulsion which casts its shadow on the wall? Film and movies and projection itself is a very interesting subject to me. Just the way that that works is very cool, because it's sort of coloring the light to appear in a specific way. And I'm talking about analog projection, not necessarily digital projection. I think LEDs, they work in a similar way. They're not a projection. They're almost the reverse of a projection, if you will. They're projecting out towards your eye. New modern TVs like LEDs and stuff, they're actually shooting the projection into your eyes, which is the opposite of a projection, which you're shooting the projection at the wall and then it's reflecting off the wall and coming out to bounce back into your eyes. It's a completely different technique and a different technology. So is the soul like the light bulb, or is the soul the film, or is the soul both the light bulb and the film, or is the world the film, or is the world the media of the film, and our experience of the world is the movie acting out, reflecting off the screen? In which case, who is the observer? Is it us? Are we the observer of this film of reality that is a projection of the soul? Or, see, because I kind of think everybody's film is unique.
Yeah.
Your film is unique.
Because only I can experience the same as you. We can only experience it from our perspective. We can't, I don't see the world through your eyes, and you don't see the world through my eyes.
True. I feel like we can share it, though. Like right now, we're having a conversation. We're sort of sharing the universe in a way. Yeah. We're sharing a part of ourselves, our experience with each other.
Yeah. But is the world the stage and the person just a projection of the soul onto the stage?
You've always liked the world as but a stage, quote of Shakespeare.
Yeah, it really is. I think that if you can reach that point where I do it a lot, where I feel like, well, this is just a fucking set and I can do whatever the fuck I want right here now.
I always sort of interpret that from the perspective of Jean-Paul Sartre, is that his name? The philosopher, I believe his theory was the you that exists is the you that exists in other people's interpretation of who you are. People interpret your personality through their interactions with you, and that's the you that you are, because your existence is defined by your relationships with other people.
But they don't really know the true.
I always felt like that falls apart when you're all alone. Who are you when you're meditating in a room by yourself? Because you still obviously exist, and no one has an opinion of you if no one's around. Sort of like, does a tree make a sound if it falls in the forest? I believe it does. So I think there's a you that exists outside of that stage, but you can't really exist outside of that stage because the stage is made of the same stuff. We are all stardust, right? We all are electrons in some kind of weird cloud beaming around.
Just pretending that we're solid and mortal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's one thing I always loved about fairy tales, the idea that if you believe hard enough, it will be real. Because I think there's some truth to that. I think that's very true about our experience of everything.
Well, that goes back to principle number one, mentalism,
Oh, right.
You can tie so much into those principles. It's so weird. Even if you just have a vague understanding of them, that connects to this one.
I kind of felt like I interpreted the Hermetic principle of mentalism as there is a consciousness that exudes in the universe. I sort of interpreted from that perspective of the Platonic one or the Platonic good, the idea that there is a shared collective consciousness that is the consciousness that is part of everything in the universe, that kind of Unitarianism viewpoint that we all sort of share the breath of God, or the oneness of the universe is all part of one. Whether or not you call it God or whatever you call it, the consciousness of everything is the consciousness of everything. But from the perspective of we are all made out of the same energy, I think of that differently than if you believe in something, you can make it real. Because, I don't know, is that just an ego game that I'm playing?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
I think it's hard for humans to accept the concept that we don't exist outside of ourselves. You know what I mean? I think, therefore I am. I am who I am, therefore I must be who I am in the world.
But then again, you have to ask yourself, who are you?
That's a dangerous question for me. I go nowhere with that question.
Yeah, because honestly, everything about you that you think makes you is basically given to you by somebody else.
And in the practice that I persist with it, I've been dealing with that a lot in the last few years, where I'm defining myself in a new way. I'm trying to define myself in a new way as like a thing that I wanted to be, because I was always defining myself relative to the thing that I thought others thought that I should be or whatever. I think that's a thing you
can't
eventually get to at a certain age. You just basically decide not to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that age is different for everybody.
I think for me, while I was doing that, I was nothing but self-destructive, because who they wanted me to be and who I was were completely different. And I didn't know how to play the role or any of the roles, because you have to play a different role for each person. And then I became so self-destructive through whatever means, alcohol and whatever else. And then you realize I can't do this anymore. This trying to be who they want me to be is killing me. So I've got to be who I am. Now I've got to figure out who the fuck I am, because I don't know.
Yeah. And I think it depends on the environment you grew up in, how your parents are, how your family is. Because I feel like a lot of us are told who we're supposed to be by the way our parents relate to how we act or how we grow up. In my case, even when I would go to like closest family member, which I would probably say is my mom, if I would go to her and I would say, this thing that you think is the way people are supposed to be, I don't feel comfortable with that and I don't want to do that. There were certain aspects of that she would encourage, because she felt that was important for independence. But on the other side, there were other things where she was like, no, I'm not going to let you do that because I'm your mom and I tell you how to act, and that's not the way to act. You got to do this. And so there were aspects of myself that I never could truly feel comfortable expressing around her. I couldn't be honest about who I was necessarily or how I was, because there were things that were wrong that I might choose to do or choose to be.
Well, who defines wrong?
Well, in this case, she did, because she was mom.
Right. What is wrong in the first place? How do we define wrong?
As far as ethically, morally, societally,
right,
for ourselves, individually,
right,
for your family.
Right.
A lot of that has to do with religious upbringing.
Too many moving factors there.
Yeah, there are, and it's always genuinely relative, because I think that's a duality that we impose upon the world. We want there to be right and wrong because that feels safe.
We want more people to see the world the way we do. That gives us a sense of belonging. You know what I mean? You see the world like I do, so we're friends now.
Yeah, and that's real important.
Yeah.
To have friends that believe the same stuff.
Is that a psyop? The older I've gotten, everything seems to be a trick of psychology. Everything. The whole divide and conquer, left, right, gay, straight, whatever the category is, there's a category for you to belong in, and you better fucking stay in it. The government is so good at this divide and conquer that they don't necessarily have to. We'll do it ourselves.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at TheBlindAlchemyPodcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
I think people like to feel like we belong, so we like to create these sort of heuristic or these group mentality ideas of how to categorize people. Some people like to do that a lot more than other people. There's some people, they make that their profession, and all they do is put things in little boxes and define things the way they're supposed to be. But there's other people who completely resist that and like chaos, you know what I mean?
You're right. I don't know. Chaos has its place, I guess, but order creates chaos. It's probably the same.
As far as politics, though, it seems like there is a part of that politics game about trying to get money to keep the politics going, and you got to have voters who are going to donate to your cause so you have enough money to run your thing, and then you want to divide all those voters into these groups so you can make sure you get the highest count. I mean, we've gamified all that.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to some podcasts and they were talking about Kamala Harris and the mad rush to have this convention at the end of the election cycle, and they were talking about how it only seems like a big rush because we've gotten in this weird rut of having this non-ending election cycle where the election cycle starts every 4 years. You know, it never ends.
Yeah.
100 years ago or 200 years ago, they wouldn't have even picked the candidates until September. You know what I mean? And they'd be like, okay, pick everybody who could vote. Went out and voted a month later.
Well, Congress wasn't so big then. In the Senate, they had daytime jobs, you know?
Sure.
They weren't paid politicians for motherfucking life, which is something we need to stop desperately.
The idea that your whole role as a person on the planet is to be the politician, that is a very specialized thing that we've created for, in some ways, probably our amusement.
Yeah. And they pushed this idea of a democracy. The United States was never a democracy.
It did aspire to those ideals of the ancient Greek stories that were told about probably a time that, for all intents and purposes, never really existed, right? That was kind of like a fairy tale.
Yeah. It's supposed to be an aspect of two different systems, right?
Yeah.
The Democratic Republic. Yeah, you're supposed to be able to vote on stuff. But we've gotten to a point where the minority rules, and they wrote the rules, and they're going to keep the minority in power.
The majority doesn't vote.
No. The minority keeps its power, and they'll do anything to keep the power. So they've got to divide and conquer. All they have to do is promote one radical voice. There you go. They'll separate themselves. They'll fight over this moron for 100 years.
You said you feel like it's kind of like psyops, like it's a game that's being played against us. There definitely are people that run PR campaigns and sit around and try to figure out, if we say this thing, how many people can we tweak their response and get them to pay attention to this? I definitely agree that that is a thing. That's a major part of our society, but it's not just in politics. It's in everything from the hundreds of commercials that a lot of people watch every day and that we're all subjected to.
These streaming services have their own fucking commercials for their own streaming services.
That's right.
Like, you're paying for fucking, like, that was the whole point of the streaming service.
That's right.
I'll pay you. Why don't I fucking watch these goddamn commercials?
That's right. Because they figured it out.
I had to pay $3 extra to fucking make Amazon stop. And I was like, it's worth the $3.
Yes.
I shouldn't be fucking paying this $3, but fuck you. I'm paying it anyway.
That's why I do not pay for streaming services, because I saw that coming from the beginning.
I was like, fuck you. My source of anime, I will fucking not.
When Netflix first came out, I was like, oh man, they're just going to start gracefully. And that's been happening with all the podcasts lately, man. It's driving me insane because I depend on podcasts. That is a crucial part of my day. I could get away without it. I would have to come up with new coping strategies, but it's such a crucial part of my day where it used to be like a bunch of independent podcasters who would get ads and put on their ads, but now all these corporations have bought up all the podcasting shops, and so they just inject the ads into the app. And it used to be your independent podcast curator guy, they would make the commercial kind of cool or funny or something like that, and they still do that on some shows, but then these companies are just injecting these ads that they don't give a fuck. They are all compressed to shit like old TV ads, so they're like 9 decibels louder than the fucking podcast you're listening to. And maybe the whole point of the podcast you're listening to is chill you out and make you feel good and calm, and then all of a sudden it's like, grocery store screaming at you, go to Kroger's and buy some Doritos and Taco Bell, and it's like, fuck you, you asshole. I was chilling out to my bedtime podcast. I was just getting my sleepy vibes on, and now you're screaming at me 9 decibels louder. What the fuck? The thing that kills me about it is that it's so polished and professional, but it's so wrong. And it could be done so much better. They could just put ads for whatever sleep aid during the Sleepy Time podcast, and they would sell so much more of that shit, because we're not immune to them, because we're just bombarded with them constantly. But I think we're getting more and more to the point now with advertising that we almost don't even recognize it anymore. You know, like our brains just filter it out now.
Desensitized.
Of course, the best thing about podcasts, you just hit the fast forward button and skip the ad.
Yeah.
Which is why I still love podcasts or whatever. You couldn't do that on TV when we were kids. You had to get up and walk away or turn off the volume. There was no way to get out of advertising hell.
Yeah, you remember when TiVo happened and you could fast forward the fucking commercial? That was the greatest goddamn thing ever, right?
It was the greatest thing ever.
You can't do it now.
You can't do it on streaming services, that's for damn sure.
What annoys me is we're ad-free, and then there's an ad for shit on their streaming service.
Yes.
That's an ad. You're not ad-free.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not paying for this particular, streaming service, but there's still ads.
Yeah.
One of the things that gets me is, like, I watch Tubi sometimes. Tubi's free, right? So you got to deal with the fucking commercials.
Yeah.
So fucking commercials, though, they're all drugs. They're all AIDS drugs, and they're all HIV shit, and you're like, dude, you shouldn't be taking that even if you had AIDS. Listen to that. You know what I mean? May cause death, may cause anal bleeding, maybe blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. That whole legalese.
I went to my doctor and was like, hey, we're going to stop this, because I listened to some shit about the negative
side effects
disclaimer, and I was like, I shouldn't even be taking this.
Yeah, it's scary. Yeah.
So I was like, hey, we're going to stop. And I'm sure whatever I'm on now is just as bad, but that's why I started reading all this labels,
Yeah.
Because I got to watch the sugar and carbohydrate contents and stuff. And
right.
If it's above 5, that's my cutoff sugar-wise, I'm not fucking with it. And 5 lets me being generous sometimes, Like, I really want to eat that, but it's high.
What's 5? What does that mean?
5 grams of sugar.
Okay.
If it's above 5 grams of sugar, I try not to eat it.
Yeah.
I walk around the grocery store like, yeah. I want to go buy some chicken. Yeah, but is that lab-grown chicken? Is that 3D printed chicken? Is that actual chicken? And how many hormones are in that chicken?
We don't have the 3D printed chicken yet. I'm kind of looking forward to the 3D chicken because I think it'll be better in some ways. Of course, I've noticed now it's a big thing for places to put on the package, we do not treat our chickens with antibiotics ever. And I'm not sure what that is in response to.
Hormones, growth hormones.
But I think the chickens probably need a little bit of antibiotics because they're living in chicken shit in a small little cage shitting on each other all day long. So maybe rethink that idea. Maybe the antibiotics
I think we're not giving them growth hormones, which they probably are anyway, because fuck you, I can say I'm not doing something all day long.
Yeah. Antibiotics and growth hormones are completely different things.
Yeah, but you're a stupid American, so shut up and eat this,
To your average consumer, yeah. I think you're probably right about that. I'm sure there was something that I missed in the zeitgeist about how antibiotics were shown to cause cancer or something like that. the levels of antibiotics they were using was probably insane.
Well, I mean, if you're consuming antibiotics all the time, they just become less and less effective, right?
That is true. And that I'm sure is also the thing, like they're trying to prevent the idea of creating super MRSA or super bugs and stuff.
Because that was the thing for a while where MRSA got real big because none of the antibiotics.
Oh, it's still a thing. It never went away. It's only gotten worse. It's just progressively been getting worse. We're just talking about it less. It's still a thing.
But yeah. Under the rug. I don't feel that any government agency has your best interests at heart, and they're just out to profit. The FDA.
I think it depends on.
Think about this. Think about how much American food is banned in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff Americans eat is kind of wild and crazy. I think about that when I go around the grocery store. I do also read labels when I buy stuff. My whole thing now, what I try to buy the most of is things that are real food. I buy a lot of fruit. I buy a lot of vegetables. I do buy meat. It's packaged and stuff, obviously, because I get it at the grocery store. But I don't buy as much of all the pasta that I used to eat. I eat a lot of oatmeal and grain, but there's a lot of preservatives that they put into the packaged pasta that it, quite frankly, just doesn't even need to be there. They put it in there so it can sit on a shelf for a month and a half, but there's no real reason. You can make your own pasta. The only ingredients you need are egg, salt, water, flour. That's it. But you read the labels and there's a paragraph of shit in there, and a lot of it is chemical things that they figured out that are really amazing science. Don't get me wrong, the fact that the food stays viable on the shelf for 3 months is an amazing technological innovation that humans have done. It is amazing that our food lasts that long, because you go back 100 years and that didn't exist. You had to eat it in like 3 days or it's bad. You know what I mean?
There weren't even grocery stores.
Not necessarily flour, but
Yeah.
it would get boll weevils and stuff in it if you left it sitting around. I think you're spot on about checking labels, but I think the key to that is, and it can depend on where you live. So if you live in a place where there's only a big box grocery store that you can shop at, then you may not have a lot of choices for purchasing foods that don't have a lot of preservatives and stuff in them.
Right. We have a farmer's market, and sometimes I go to that thing, but I never get anything because it's too people-y. Like, I go into panic mode as soon as I fucking get out of the car. It's like,
Yeah, that social anxiety stuff.
too many people here. And I feel that way at the grocery store most of the time.
Yeah, I do too. I don't like grocery stores for that reason. I didn't necessarily used to feel that way.
All right, I'm gonna get off here then.
All right, man. Thanks for talking. I hope you have a good night.
Me too.
Thank you very much for being here with us. I'm your host, your guest on the quest as we float through the sea of frequency that we call reality. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. Please hit us up on every social platform you can find. Be safe out there. Come back and talk to me, all right?
We would love to receive your feedback and your questions for advice. Please email us or send us a voicemail. Our address is theblindalchemypodcast@gmail.com. Find, like, review, subscribe, and contact us on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at The Blind Alchemy Podcast. All one word. Please subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player. We are available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and anchor.fm/TheBlindAlchemyPodcast. Please tell all your friends, enemies, and any strangers to listen to our podcast. This will help us bring joy to everyone. Text-to-speech services were provided by freetts.com and readloud.net. We would like to extend a special thank you to the world's greatest musicians, sound designers, and engineers at Haireline Productions for their help with the composition, performance, editing, production, and recording of both the original music and today's show. Please like their content on SoundCloud/Haireline Productions.